Meet Daisy. To anyone else, she was just a cow, gentle, calm, living her peaceful days on the farm. But today, something was different. Something was pulling her toward the forest. She didn't know why, but she felt it. Animals have instincts beyond what we understand. They sense things, danger, kindness, even sorrow. And on this morning, Daisy sensed something. Something hidden beyond the trees, waiting to be discovered. At first, the farmer thought nothing of it. Just another morning, another routine. But when Daisy refused to move, refused to eat, refused to leave the edge of the trees, he knew something was wrong. Daisy took her first step toward the forest, then another, and another. She wasn't wandering. She wasn't lost. She was leading. The farmer hesitated, watching, uncertain, but something about the way she moved sent a chill down his spine. And then he heard it, a sound so faint, so fragile, that it almost disappeared into the rustling leaves, a sound that didn't belong in the middle of the woods, a sound that sent his heart racing. It was coming from a box, a small, damp, forgotten box, hidden beneath the trees. The farmer took a step closer. His hands trembled as he reached out, and when he finally looked inside, what he saw would change everything. The forest was quiet, the morning air thick with the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. Daisy stood still, her large eyes locked on a spot just ahead, her breath steady but deliberate. The farmer, now following closely behind, felt a strange unease settle in his chest. He had lived on this land for years, knew every inch of it, yet something about today felt different. Daisy wasn't just exploring, she was searching. With careful steps, she moved deeper, her hooves sinking into the soft soil, her ears twitching at the faintest sound. The farmer hesitated. Should he turn back? Was this just a strange coincidence? But then, just as he was about to call Daisy back, a noise cut through the silence. Faint, weak, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. His heart lurched. That wasn't the cry of an animal. It was something else, something human. He quickened his pace, brushing aside low-hanging branches, his boots crunching against twigs and leaves. Daisy had stopped, her nose hovering just above the ground, her breath warm against a crumpled pile of leaves. And there, hidden beneath them, was an old, weathered cardboard box. Damp from the morning dew, its edges curled and torn. It looked as if it had been left here for some time. But it wasn't just a discarded piece of trash. It moved. The farmer's breath caught in his throat. His hands trembled as he reached forward, slowly pulling back the folds of the box. And then, his world stopped. Inside, wrapped in nothing but a thin, tattered blanket, was a baby. Tiny, fragile, barely moving. A weak cry escaped its lips, barely more than a whimper, but it was enough to send a shiver through the farmer's entire body. How? Why? Who would leave a child out here, alone, in the cold? Daisy let out a low, soft sound, nudging closer, her warm breath brushing against the baby's tiny fingers. The farmer could hardly believe what he was seeing. He had heard stories of abandoned animals, of lost things finding their way home. But this was different. This was a life that had been left to fate, a life that, if not for Daisy, might never have been found. He swallowed hard, his throat dry as he carefully lifted the baby into his arms. The child stirred, its small fingers gripping weakly at his sleeve. It was so light, too light. The farmer's chest tightened. There was no time to waste. He turned on his heel, rushing back through the trees, Daisy following close behind, her eyes never leaving the fragile bundle in his arms. The questions swirled in his mind. Who had left this baby here? Why? And perhaps most unsettling of all, what would have happened if Daisy hadn't found them in time? The farmer ran, his heart pounding harder with every step. The weight of the baby in his arms felt impossibly light, yet the reality of the situation was unbearably heavy. The child barely moved, its tiny chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. The air was cold, and the thin blanket wrapped around the fragile body was nowhere near enough to keep it warm. He had no idea how long the baby had been out there, but one thing was certain: it didn't have much time. Daisy trotted beside him, her large eyes filled with something almost human: concern, urgency. She had found this child, had led the farmer straight to them, and now she refused to leave their side. Every few steps, she turned her head toward the baby, as if checking to make sure it was still breathing. The farmer couldn't shake the feeling that, somehow, she understood the gravity of what was happening. Bursting through the tree line, the farmer sprinted toward his house. His wife, who had been tending to the morning chores, looked up in alarm as he rushed toward the porch. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw what he was carrying. Without a word, she dropped everything and reached for the baby, her hands trembling as she pulled back the blanket. The child was so cold, too cold. The farmer grabbed his phone, his fingers shaking as he dialed emergency services. His wife, meanwhile, cradled the baby close, rubbing its tiny hands, whispering soft reassurances even as her own voice wavered. "Stay with us, little one," she murmured. "You're safe now. You're safe." Daisy stood by the window, her breath fogging up the glass as she watched intently. The cow, who had never shown particular interest in anything beyond her pasture, was now fixated on the child as if she had taken on the role of guardian. The farmer's wife rocked the baby gently, and after what felt like an eternity, a weak but unmistakable cry filled the room. It was faint, but it was a sign of life. Minutes later, the wail of approaching sirens echoed across the farm. The paramedics moved quickly, wrapping the baby in thermal blankets, checking its vitals. The farmer and his wife stood back, their hands clasped tightly together, fear and hope battling in their eyes. One of the paramedics turned to them and spoke words that made their breath hitch. "It's a miracle this baby was found in time." As the ambulance pulled away, the farmer turned to Daisy, running a hand gently along her side. "You saved that child," he whispered. She simply blinked, her warm, steady presence somehow comforting in the chaos of the morning. But even as the baby was taken to safety, one question lingered in the air, unanswered, unsettling. Who had left them there, and why? The days following the rescue were a blur of hospital visits, phone calls, and paperwork. The baby, though still fragile, was slowly growing stronger with each passing hour. The medical team had managed to stabilize the child, and after a few days of careful monitoring, it seemed as though the worst had passed. But the lingering question remained: who had left the child out in the woods, and why? While the authorities worked on their investigation, the farmer and his wife found themselves unable to stop thinking about the baby. They had no children of their own, and now this child, so small, so vulnerable, had found its way into their lives. It was almost as if the universe had led them down a path they never expected, and they couldn't just walk away from it. As the days turned into weeks, the baby, now named Emma, began to thrive. She grew stronger, her once weak cries becoming louder, her tiny hands gripping tighter. The farmer and his wife poured all their love into her, nurturing her every need. But what stood out most was Daisy. The cow, who had once led the farmer to the baby, was now more attached than ever. Every morning, Daisy would stand by the window, watching as the farmer's wife rocked Emma in her arms. It was as if Daisy knew something the others didn't, something about the bond between the child and the farm. The farmer chuckled at the thought, but every time Daisy lingered by the window, he couldn't help but feel that the cow had a deeper understanding of what had transpired. Then, one day, something incredible happened. The farmer and his wife decided to take Emma outside, the warm sun casting golden rays over the farm. Daisy, ever watchful, stood in the field as they approached. The moment the baby was placed on the soft grass, Daisy walked over slowly, her large, gentle eyes never leaving Emma. She lowered her head, nudging the baby ever so gently. Emma giggled, her tiny hands reaching out to touch Daisy's soft fur. It was a moment of pure magic, proof that the connection between animals and humans could be far deeper than we ever truly understood. Emma laughed for the first time that day, and the farmer and his wife exchanged looks of wonder and disbelief. In that moment, they both realized that this miracle was more than just a rescue. It was a beginning. As the months passed, Emma continued to grow, and the bond between her and Daisy only deepened. The farm had become more than a home. It was a sanctuary, a place of love, safety, and miracles. The authorities had yet to find any leads on Emma's biological family, but the farmer and his wife knew that they were the family she needed. One evening, as the sun set and the sky painted itself in shades of pink and orange, the farmer sat on the porch. Emma nestled in his arms, watching Daisy graze peacefully in the field. He couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Daisy hadn't just found a lost baby in the forest. She had given that child a second chance at life. Sometimes heroes come in forms we never expect, and sometimes they lead us to the most beautiful miracles. As we come to the end of this incredible story, it's hard not to reflect on just how much we can learn from the unexpected moments in life. Daisy, a simple cow, led us to witness something truly miraculous. A baby, abandoned and alone, given a second chance at life because of the love and care of a family who never expected to be part of such a beautiful journey. This story is a reminder that there's still so much kindness, so much hope in the world, often in the places we least expect. And we can all play a part in sharing those moments, supporting the incredible things that happen around us, whether it's helping a person in need or showing love to an animal. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that every life, no matter how small or forgotten, deserves a chance, then please, don't keep it to yourself. Take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. You never know who else might need to hear this story or be reminded that there are good things happening in the world every single day. And we want to hear from you too. Have you ever experienced an unexpected act of kindness or witnessed a moment that changed everything for someone? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let's keep this conversation going. Because just like Daisy and Emma, every story is worth telling. Thank you for watching, and remember, heroes come in all forms. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any more of these incredible real-life stories that will make you believe in the impossible.